You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
At Carvell University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can finish the bachelor's degree you started in 19 months and under $19,000. A different future is closer than you think with Carvell University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by PACE, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
Before we start the show, How To is fueled by your questions and conundrums. So if you're wrestling with how to navigate something in your life, big or small, serious or funny, we want to hear about it. And for an upcoming episode, we want to hear about how your life is being affected by revenge. That's right, revenge. You can share your story about getting even or having petty revenge sicked upon you by sending us an email at howto@slate.com or leaving us a voicemail at 646-495-4001. Okay, on with the show. Let's meet this week's listener.
I'm Jennifer, and I am mom to Maddie, who is on her way to college in the fall.
Are you excited?
I have all the feelings. I am definitely excited because she's a great kid, but I'm definitely sad because she's a great kid.
Welcome to How To. I'm Carvell Wallace, and let me just say, I know what our listener Jennifer is going through. I have 2 college-age kids, both of whom are out of the house. And when they left, I experienced this level of anxiety that was terrifying. I mean, you've been your kids' sole source of safety since the day they were born. I mean, literally in those early years, you could pick them up and comfort them. And then later I could come in a car and pick them up. Like, need to come home? I can come get you. But now, if something happens, they can't just run to me, and I can't just run to them. They're adults. They're in charge of their own lives. And yet, they still have a lot to learn. And so knowing when to step in and when to stay out is really difficult. Our listener Jennifer is starting that same journey. She and her husband are sending their daughter off to college, and in just a few weeks, she will be 600 miles away from home.
Maddie is heading off to the University of Kansas, and so there's a little bit of history for her there. Both her parents went to Kansas.
Aww.
And we lived in Kansas when she was born. And the particular year that I was pregnant with Maddie, we actually had basketball tickets.
Love that.
And season tickets. And if you know, Kansas basketball is a big thing. And so we often joke that that was her first season of going to college at Kansas. You know, we made visits back to the college campus, and it just seemed that it would be a great place for her to grow. The other thing is that she's also interested in architecture, and they have a great architecture department at Kansas. And she's always enjoyed sports, both basketball and football, and so being a fan will be a good thing for her too.
How is she feeling at this point? Is she worried? Does she have anxiety about what it's going to be like to be far away from home?
You know, Maddie has always been a very forward thinker. And as far as knowing where she wanted to go to college, what she wanted to study, she's known for many years. But she's also naturally anxious.
There are plenty of reasons for high school seniors like Maddie to be anxious about starting their freshman year, and we'll get to some of those later. But of course, it isn't only Maddie who is anxious about change.
As a parent, you worry about, first of all, being so far away. We are currently in Wisconsin, and so going to Kansas is a 9-hour plus drive.
Yeah.
So there is that concern, not being in close proximity and in case of emergency. But there's all these other things that we have to think about. Banking and roommates and dorms and sororities and safety. There's a lot to college that I don't think she fully realizes how things are going to change for her. And I want to know, how can I best support her in this transition?
Which brings us to today's expert.
My name is Christine Self, and I serve as Director of Parent and Family Relations at Texas Tech University.
Christine has been helping parents and students navigate the transition to college for more than 20 years. And during that time, she has seen how that transition has been affected by the rising cost of college tuition, increasing expectations for the college experience, changes in technology, especially those tools that we use to keep in touch with our kids.
You know, I talk with so many families when they're sending their kids off to college. And I think, Jennifer, you mentioned this earlier, you're feeling all the feelings. I heard from you lots of feelings of excitement, your daughter going off to your alma mater and how wonderful that is, and how she has really picked a place that sounds like it's going to be absolutely perfect for her. But of course, there's going to be some of those stumbling blocks. I work at an institution in Texas, and Texas is a huge state. Many of our students come from the state of Texas, but that can also be a 9-hour drive, right? And so that is one of our family's biggest concerns is what is it going to be like being so far away?
Coming up, how to talk with your kid about the big change that's ahead and how to think about your role as a parent. Spoiler alert, a lot is going to change. Stay with us. If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. There's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names to brands just getting started. And they give you hundreds of beautiful, ready-to-go templates to express your brand's style. Tackle important tasks like inventory, payment, analytics, all in one place. You can spread your brand's word with built-in marketing and email tools. And that iconic purple Shop Pay button used by millions of businesses around the world, it's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet. Your customers already love it. If you want to see fewer carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/howto. Go to shopify.com/howto. Shopify.com/howto. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast. Making financial decisions shouldn't feel like trying to pick a place to eat with friends. Too many choices and everyone has an opinion on what's worth it. One person says, invest in crypto. Another person says, go all in on real estate. Meanwhile, you're just trying to figure out if your credit card's annual fee will ever pay off. That's where the nerds come in. NerdWallet's finance journalists do the research so you don't have to, breaking down the fine print, cutting through the misinformation, and giving you real fact-based insights so you can make smart financial moves without the group chat chaos. NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast can help you get smarter about using home equity without over-leveraging yourself, and when refinancing actually saves you money and when it doesn't. Want to know if dividend stocks or growth stocks make more sense for you? Listen to the nerds. They can also help decipher the real difference between ETFs and mutual funds without the jargon. Make your next financial move with confidence. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money podcast on your favorite podcast app, and stay tuned until the end of this episode to hear the Smart Money trailer. We're back with our listener, Jennifer, who is sending her eldest daughter off to the University of Kansas in a little over a month, and Christine Self, who works in the Parent and Family Relations Department at Texas Tech, which, if you're as old as I am, may sound like an entirely new concept.
No, there was no parent and family relations back in the 80s and 90s when I was in school. And I went to college right here at Texas Tech. It's a relatively new field that didn't really come into play at universities until about the mid-2000s. Families started expecting more involvement. And if you think about the K through 12 involvement, parents were really expected to be involved in ways that we had not seen before. And that's really extended to colleges and universities now. We on college campuses are recognizing that families are a huge part of their student support system, and we want to partner with them to help our students be successful. Even if a university doesn't have a specific department, they likely have a specific phone number or email that families can reach out to with concerns and questions, and the folks who are attending to those are used to working with families.
And what are some of the common questions and concerns that you get from parents? I imagine it's kind of all over the board, but I would think that there's a few things that kind of occur frequently.
We get so many questions about, the distance thing, obviously. What's it going to be like for my student living so far away? There's so many ways that we can keep connected now that maybe when you were in college, certainly when I was in college, we didn't have that. The good news is that we have technology to help us seem closer. And so I often talk with families about what would it be like to set up a weekly FaceTime with your student. Make it a tradition. Every Sunday at, 7 p.m., you're going to see each other's faces. We get lots of questions about safety. How does my student get around campus late at night? And we're able to share with them that we have safe ride programs. And that really puts families' minds at ease. We get questions about really nuts and bolts things, like my student did really poorly on their chemistry exam. Is there tutoring? These are great questions that families can ask. And now there are people on campuses to specifically talk with families about those. Because we know that, if a student does poorly on their chemistry exam, the first person they're probably going to tell is their mom or their dad. And so we want mom and dad to know about all the resources so that they can in turn talk to their student about, hey, go over to that learning center. I understand they have tutoring for chemistry over there. So really just helping us help our students by involving their parents is really important.
Christine says that if you can afford it, visiting your student during that critical first year can make a world of difference. And if possible, plan to visit more than once.
Most colleges now will have a specific family weekend that's a great time for families to go and visit and really spend time with their students and see all the fun. The Thanksgiving holiday might be another time for Maddie to come home and maybe try to pick one more weekend to just really have a planned visit if you can. And I know it's a long distance and travel is not inexpensive, but that may be very helpful to you.
Jennifer, you're an elementary school teacher. That's what you do for a living. You're on the other end of this in a lot of ways. You have anxious parents who are dropping their kids off or worried about how their kids are performing in your class. Are they getting along socially? How has your experience as a teacher kind of impacted the way you view Maddie going off to be a student?
So yes, as a third grade teacher, I try to build connections with my own students. And a lot of the advice that I have given Maddie in her own career as a student is to make those connections with your teachers. And I hope that she does so in college as well. Making those connections, remembering that they are there for you. When I was in college, I avoided the professors, and I really didn't have that same perspective where they're really there for you and to help you learn and grow and gain those skills. Yeah. I have to laugh. I go back to when we were talking about the weekly FaceTime. Back in my day, I think the rule was that I could only call home if it was after 7 p.m. or on the weekends, because that's what the long distance rates were.
The long distance, so. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
so
glad right. that we don't have to worry about that anymore.
So plan to visit campus once or twice if you're able, and reach out to the person who is playing Christine's role on your kid's campus to learn about the resources that are available. And yeah, now that long distance charges are no longer a thing, parents are not limited to communicating at night or on weekends. We can communicate whenever we want using 1 billion different apps. But should we? What's the right amount of contact? Like my kids sometimes sort of go semi-MIA by my standards, I'm thinking also about a cousin of mine whose adult kid just like disappeared for like a month and a half or some ungodly length of time and was fine, but just needed a break from mom's voice. You know what I mean? To like sort his own way through the world. And that's such an anxiety provoking experience for a parent. And yet I think that sometimes taking a step away from your parents can be a part of what you need to separate and form your own identity. What is your advice for parents who are worried that their kid may agree to call them every week, but this week I have finals, then this week they're at the student club and they don't really feel like stepping out, or they're having a good time, or they just met someone cute? How do you help parents understand that they might not do that and it might not necessarily be a bad thing?
Yeah, we do get phone calls like that. My son texts me every morning, and today he didn't, and I'm really worried that something's happened. Mm-hmm. That instant panic that you might feel at that time. And so I have talked to families and parents through those kinds of calls many times where a communication pattern suddenly changes. And so we do have to talk with them about maybe he left his phone in his room while he went to class. And they always call me back a few hours later. Well, I heard from him. Everything was fine. But, I've also talked with parents that they really did go several days without talking with their student, and they were very concerned. And, I was able to reach out to our housing folks and give them some comfort that their student had swiped their ID in their residence hall and that they were there. They just maybe, like you said, needed a break from talking. I never get those phone calls and think, why is this person calling? Because they haven't talked to their student in 1 hour. We always talk it through. 99 times out of 100, it's just something simple like they left their phone or ran out of batteries or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, communication patterns may absolutely change, and it may not be a big deal. And it may be that they're really finding a new home at their university and just really flourishing there and talking with lots of people and living their lives. And they're not thinking at that moment about, oh, I was supposed to call my mom today. And that's totally normal. They're exploring things. They're learning things. Of course, nothing is 100% safe, but college is a semi-safe environment to try new things and learn new things and meet new people and, get into a little bit of trouble, but not too much trouble.
Jennifer's daughter, Maddie, will be departing a week earlier than other KU students so she can get active in Greek life.
Well, I've heard the expression, to be a good parent is to give your child roots and wings. And Maddie, she's starting her sorority rush. That's the first thing that is up for her. So one of my big concerns is how to be supportive through what I'm sure is going to be lots of ups and downs. So do you have any advice on that?
I do. I did that myself when I was a student, and there can be a lot of ups and downs with sorority recruitment. One of those could be she doesn't get her favorite house. That could be really difficult. If that happened with my daughter, I would just say, you know what? There's a good fit for everybody. Have an open mind. You may find that this happened for a reason and you really like the place that you get a bid from. That could be the first bump in the road when it comes to joining a sorority. Other things to consider about fraternity and sorority life and really college life in general is exposure to alcohol. That's something that a lot of families don't really want to talk about, but it's pretty important. Being able to have those conversations in an open way that's not simply saying, well, don't drink, taking kind of a harm reduction look at it and saying, make sure that the legal implications of underage drinking. Make sure that what the Code of Student Conduct is about drinking, and make sure that you always would have a sober ride, that you have your Uber and Lyft things updated, that about that Safe Ride program that's probably on the campus. Those are important but difficult conversations to have.
Another concern that I have with Maddie is that she's struggled with a chronic condition with her GI system. Having her navigate and getting the help that she needs when she needs it. All the doctors up here have said, we can do telehealth appointments, but that's still not the same as seeing somebody in person. And then also, we often will kind of talk through how she's feeling in the situation and how to get the help that she needs. So any thoughts on how I can be supportive of her in regards to her health?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because what I find is a lot of families will call, usually about, 6 or 8 weeks into the semester, and suddenly their student is, they've got a cold or they've got the flu or they've got something, and they suddenly need to use the student health services on campus, and they're not really sure how to do it. Can they make an appointment for their student? Find out about the services that are going to be available on campus. I know that here we have a full service clinic with a pharmacy right on campus that students can go and visit. I know you mentioned that telehealth is available with your current physicians, but, maybe seeing about getting a referral to someone locally where your student's campus is. Campus clinics are going to operate maybe 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. So there won't be any services on the weekends typically. Knowing where the nearest urgent care is, doing that research ahead of time so that you're not worried about it in the moment and trying to scramble and find out those things. Another thing is make sure that Maddie can walk into any doctor's office anywhere and be able to fill out all those forms about medical history. A lot of families don't think about that ahead of time. And then their students trying to call them on the phone and ask them how to fill out all these forms. They don't know what to put, those sorts of things. So a little bit of preparation and a little bit of research about the medical facilities on campus and nearby campus, I think would really help ease your mind a little bit about that.
How important do you think it is legally, like with HIPAA for her medical as well as her grades? What should I do in case of emergency?
Yes. So the campus clinic, just like any other, would definitely need for her to fill out a HIPAA form to add you in order to be able to speak to them about any of the medical conditions. It's also probably a good idea to talk about medical power of attorney. I know on our campus, our student legal team actually does a power of attorney clinic for students to add their parents to their medical power of attorney. So if that's not available on Maddie's campus, you might talk locally with an attorney there to get those forms taken care of in case they're needed. And then you mentioned grades as well. So that is going to be FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. It's very interesting that the folks that fought for students to have ownership of their student records to the point that a university cannot share grades or a class schedule with anyone without that student's permission, or the same generation who wanted that rescinded when their kids went to college, right? Talk to Maddie about maybe filling out a FERPA waiver so that you can have some access to the big picture. For example, whether she has a hold on her account, maybe she owes tuition. You can't even find out some of those things without the FERPA waiver filled out. And certainly grades would be the same thing. So if you wanted her to give you access to maybe find out what her midterms or final grades were, she'll need to fill out that waiver or you won't have access to it. This process will look different at every institution, but at most campuses, that process of a FERPA waiver is handled by the registrar's office. They can sign off access to financial student records that would include grades and schedules and any holds or maybe even student conduct issues.
So your kid can sign off on releasing their academic records to a parent, but before you go down that road, you should probably take a moment to consider whether you really need that kind of access or whether it's just your last grasp at control. And if it's the latter, then maybe you could let your kid create the boundaries and develop a sense of independence and let them tell you how they're doing and what they need from you. If you're enjoying this conversation with Christine and Jennifer, Slate Plus members can listen to a quick fix bonus episode right now, where I talk with Christine and Jennifer about helping younger siblings deal with the changing family dynamics. Also, Jennifer reveals that there is a boyfriend in the picture. This episode is available for you to listen to right now. If you aren't already a Slate Plus member, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the How To show page or visit slate.com/how-to+ to get access wherever you listen. And still to come, how to make the most of your kids' final weeks at home before they head off to school. We'll be back. If you've listened to the How To podcast for a while, then you know how important acceptance is when it comes to personal growth. And do you know who else is big on acceptance? Discover. You see, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. That's a whole lot of places and a whole lot of acceptance, which is great for Discover, but even better for you. Based on the 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Making financial decisions shouldn't feel like trying to pick a place to eat with friends. Too many choices, and everyone has an opinion on what's worth it. One person says, invest in crypto. Another says, go all in on real estate. Meanwhile, you're just trying to figure out if your credit card's annual fee will ever pay off. That's where the nerds come in. NerdWallet's finance journalists do the research so you don't have to, breaking down the fine print, cutting through misinformation, and giving you real, fact-based insights, so you can make smart financial moves without the group chat chaos. NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast can help you get smarter about using home equity without over-leveraging yourself, and when refinancing actually saves you money and when it doesn't. Want to know if dividend stocks or growth stocks make more sense for you? Listen to the nerds. They also help decipher the real difference between ETFs and mutual funds without the jargon. Make your next financial move with confidence. Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast on your favorite podcast app. And stay tuned until the end of the episode to hear the Smart Money trailer.
Another question that comes up for me, and let me know if this resonates with you, Jennifer, is that there's this stuff that the kids will tell us, like, there's a hold in my account. It turns out we owe another $7,000 and it didn't go through or whatever. But then there's stuff that you don't know about that's happening. Like someone in the class is maybe treating you in a way that's harmful or hurtful, and you don't want to say anything about it to your parents, and social issues and things that are a little squishier. That's the stuff that I think I, as a parent, have always been worried about with my kids, that they're going through interpersonal dynamics that may be harmful or frightening to them, but they don't know how to talk about them or even know how to identify that that's a problem. I'm curious what you say to parents who are worried about the social dynamics.
That does come up sometimes. A lot of times it's with the issue of hazing. Mm-hmm. I'll get a call from a parent who won't tell me their name or their student's name, and they will say that they're concerned that maybe their student's being hazed by a fraternity or student organization or something like that, because they don't want to embarrass their student. They don't want their student to be ostracized by the people in the group that they're involved in. And we have lots of ways that families can report things anonymously that can be investigated. And so often I will point them in that direction. That's really hard because students want to keep those kinds of things to themselves often. And they don't want to talk about any kind of instances of bullying. They want to handle it themselves. They don't want their parents to get involved. That's a really tough one. Mm-hmm. I haven't had too many families outside the instance of a group hazing that I've talked to about that, but I can imagine that would be a really tough one. And so how, as a parent, would you ask about it, right, if you don't know what's happening? I think a lot of times when having conversations with your student about how things are going, just asking those real open-ended questions about what's it like when you're in class? What's it like in your residence halls? If they're in a relationship with someone, what is your roommate like to do? Ask what kind of things they like to do together. Get an overall sense of how things are for them. Because, again, you don't know what to ask if you don't know what's going on. So that's a really tough one.
Maddie is going to Rush, and if she joins a sorority, they have to take a safety class. They have to enroll in a safety class. Is that something that Texas Tech offers young women?
We have a class that is about alcohol and sexual violence that every new student has to take. Mm. And then the ones who are involved in fraternity and sorority life have some additional training. Being in those groups is a wonderful thing. It will build lifelong relationships. There are so many opportunities, but there's also some things that could happen. Like I mentioned, it's often an alcohol culture. And so having that training for students is incredibly important. So I'm very glad that she's going to have access to that. Oh, and I would also say, ask her what she learned in it, because that can jump off some really good conversations between the two of you about, some of those topics like alcohol, consent, sexual violence, those sorts of things. That's an excellent way to start a conversation that might be a little bit tough to bring up otherwise, is ask her what she learned in her training.
As the parent of a newly burgeoning adult, asking questions can be a tricky business. It's like you want to know what's going on, but you don't want it to feel like you're conducting a deposition. Using classroom topics as a way in can be helpful for this. But another thing that helps is walking and talking. Instead of just sitting there staring at each other through the phone, it can be nice to schedule a time where you and your kid are FaceTiming each other on a walk. This can help things open up more naturally and make the conversation feel less forced. A lot of parents may want to use technology to, keep tabs on their kids, like show me your location, things like that. Kids, on the other hand, may want a little privacy or may not want their parent always knowing where they're at 24/7. How do you talk to parents about that?
That's another one that I would have never dreamed of when I was in college, and I would have never consented to being tracked. I would have thought that was outrageous.
Yeah. But
But so many families rely on that now. To the point that it's making the parent extremely anxious. I talked to a mom she said it was keeping her up at night on the weekends because she was constantly watching where her daughter was.
Yikes.
And I asked, well, how long has this been going on? And she basically told me it's been going on all semester. And I said, well, let's break that down a little bit. You've been tracking her location. She's been coming in late on weekends. Have you talked to her about the fact that you're tracking her? I guess she had put something on her phone that she wasn't even sure the daughter knew about it. I said, well, have you asked her how's her weekend going? And she said she was hanging out with friends. And I asked her further, I was like, did anything bad happen? And she says, well, no. And I said, well, it sounds like your daughter is doing okay. She's socializing. She's having a good time. She's also getting home safely. She's been doing this all semester. If there hasn't been a problem, I think, maybe pulling back from it a little bit if it's keeping you up at night. And Jennifer, I'd be curious to know if you all have that kind of technology that you all are using.
We haven't really used too much of the tracking devices, but what gets me is that the kids all know where they are. They pull up their phones and they know exactly where everybody is on spring break, and they think nothing of it. And I guess I'm more of a kind of a privacy person. I wouldn't want all these people to know where I was at any given minute.
I want to take a step back here and talk about, just in general, from your perspective, Christine, what are some common pitfalls for parents? I mean, it sounds like maybe over monitoring or over obsessing is one of them. What else have you seen that sort of, if you could get a megaphone and tell a bunch of parents all the same thing at one time, what would your message to them be?
We've all heard those stories of so-called helicopter parents. In my office, we don't like to use that term because we respect families and know that they want the same things that we do for their students to be successful. But I love the idea of give them roots and wings. Let them advocate for themselves. Let them know that you're there if you need me, but you need to reach out to that professor when you've gotten a bad grade. I'm not going to do that. Families should really think about calling whatever parent and family professional they have on their campus before they would ever consider calling a professor or instructor. Know that wherever your student goes to college, there's going to be resources for them to help them succeed, and make it part of your job as a parent or family member of a college student to learn about those so that when Maddie or another student calls their parent, they know, oh yeah, there's a writing center. I learned about that from my parent and family newsletter or from orientation or wherever. You should go check that out. But know that it's going to be up to the student to go check it out.
We have that orientation weekend coming right around the corner. Are there things that you think that I should make sure to take advantage of while we're down there?
So yes, if you can go to orientation, there's probably going to be at least one session that's specific for families. I would definitely find out about the office like mine that exists on campus, or the person that you should contact. as a parent or family member with questions. Because you went to Kansas, you are already familiar with the campus, but you might be surprised how much it's changed from a support perspective. You know, when I was going to college many, many years ago, there wasn't a university writing center. There wasn't a parent and family relations office. And so learning about those resources while you're there, getting some contact information, checking out the health center, sounds like that would be a really good use of your time while you're there. Doing a little recon around the area and knowing what urgent care might be nearby, what pharmacy might be nearby if the campus one is closed. And come away from orientation with at least 2 or 3 names and email addresses of folks that you can reach out to when you have questions or concerns. Make sure that you do that while you're there.
It also makes me think about these last couple months. I mean, summer is upon us, and then pretty soon it's time to start really planning for this trip. Is it within your purview, Christine, to give advice on what you should be doing with your kid in the final months of being at home?
Yeah. First of all, it sounded like you had a couple weeks left of this senior year. Enjoy every minute of that. I'm sure that Maddie's going to be enjoying it too. I always like to talk about it as, you know, you've been the manager of your student's life and you know all the nuts and bolts, all the details. That's going to change when they go to college. So maybe start shifting that mindset from manager to trusted advisor. And while you're doing that, one of my colleagues uses this. I'll tell her I stole it from her. But she always says, you've got to promote your student to assistant manager over the summer.
That's so good.
So like I mentioned, medical history. If she needs to make some final appointments before heading off to college, she should be the one making those appointments. If she has questions when she comes home from orientation, she should be making those phone calls, you know, empower her to be the one to make the phone calls. Practice some of that this summer in some way if you can, making sure that she feels comfortable talking to authority figures, people that she may need some assistance from. Start thinking about what assistant manager Maddie might look like this summer so that she can become manager in the fall.
That's great advice.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you have some resources that parents like Jennifer can seek out? Is there like a classic book that you recommend, or Facebook groups or websites that parents can go to get more information like this?
Yes. So there is a classic book out there by Marjorie Savage. It's called You're on Your Own, but I'm Here If You Need Me. She has some really great advice for families, kind of some of the things that we talked about today, but maybe in more depth. There is another great series called College Ready. And it's got a number of contributors that work at different college campuses that will talk about things. This is really helpful if you like checklists, talking points, those kinds of things from topics all over the map. So that's a really good one. And there is a Facebook group and I think a website called Grown and Flown that has some good information for families as well. So I might check that one out.
Lovely. All right, we're going to link to all those in the show notes. I just want to thank you so much both for being here. Jennifer, I know that this is a huge transition, and I remember I was truly panic-stricken at moments in ways that I hadn't been as a parent. But, you know, at least in my case, both the kids, they're having their adventures, but they're both fine. And there's so much peace now that it's been a few years. So I just want to encourage you along those lines. And Christine, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us.
Absolutely. And best of luck to Jennifer and to Maddie. And I know that there's a Christine at Kansas that can help you out and be in your corner whenever you need them.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to our listener, Jennifer, and to Christine Self. You'll find links in our show notes to the resources she mentioned. And remember, this conversation continues in our Quick Fix bonus episode about younger siblings, significant others, and how to manage those first visits back home. If you're not a Slate Plus member, you can get access right now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the How To show page, or visit slate.com/how-to-plus. And we want to help you with the situation that you're wrestling with. Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001, and we might have you on the show. How To is produced by Rosie Belson with Kevin Bendis. Joel Meyer is our supervising producer. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Courtney Martin is my co-host, and I'm Carvell Wallace. Thanks for listening.
Today's episode is sponsored by NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast. Money can be confusing. Should you invest in ETFs, get a travel rewards credit card, buy a house, or just build a really fancy pillow fort?
That could work. No shame in pillow fort game. Or you could just tune in for clear, research-backed financial insights.
I'm Sean Piles, a certified financial planner professional.
And I'm Elizabeth Ayola. We're the hosts of NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast, where you bring the money questions and we bring trustworthy information backed by NerdWallet's expert analysis, without the jargon or the sales pitch.
Our nerds do the research so you don't have to. We'll help you understand your options so you can make the best decision for your situation, from optimizing your investments and maximizing credit card rewards to making big money moves with confidence.
Plus, we keep it real. No lectures, no judgment. Just tips and tools you can use to build wealth and take control of your finances. Think of us as your financial GPS, helping you navigate your money decisions and avoid expensive wrong turns.
Whether you're planning for retirement, weighing a big purchase, or just want to make your money work harder for you, we've got insights that you can use in real life.
So, if you want practical, straightforward, and actually useful financial knowledge, plus a little bit of fun along the way, follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Trust us, future you will thank you.
Today's episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. I'm Megan Coyle.
And I'm Sally French. We're NerdWallet travel writers who help you turn dream trips into trips you can actually afford.
Because let's be honest, dream trips are usually synonymous with spending money.
But my dream is to not spend much money at all.
That's where Smart Travel comes in. We break down the best ways to stretch your travel dollars, whether it's scoring an upgrade without selling your soul, decoding loyalty programs so you can actually get something out of them, or figuring out if that ultra discount airline ticket is too good to be true.
It usually is.
And while we're at it, we'll show you how to turn canceled flights into lounge dinners and free hotel stays. Spoiler, it involves a lot of patience and a little bit of research, but don't worry, we've already done the heavy lifting. Because being financially savvy doesn't mean you have to skip out on an adventure. It just means you're the genius who paid less for it.
Each week, we bring you travel news, expert insights, and even some of our own travel wins and mishaps. All so you can travel more while paying less. And hey, you'll even have some fun along the way. So if you're ready to make your travel budget work harder and smarter, follow Smart Travel on your favorite podcast app.
First up, smarter travel. See you soon.